there's more ways to extend a helping hand. The financial programs we design with our business partners focus on creating a safety net for devoted employees. We believe secure and happy employees are essential to a successful business.
Okay, and we're live. Good morning, everyone. Good morning to our Zoom participants and good morning to our FB Live viewers. So, FB Live, LinkedIn, and YouTube viewers. Okay, so welcome to another series of our HR Virtual Summit PH 2020 Bounce Back HR. My name is Irish Malonda Samson, and I'm your host. With me is Mr. Howell Mabalot. He will be our moderator and my co-host. Hello, Sir Howell. I missed you yesterday.
Yeah, I also missed you yesterday. How was it, Miss Irish?
Very good.
Good,
Discussion with Mr. Jonathan Yabot. Yes. Okay, so let us now start our e-learning session, and please let me greet our participants who are from out of the country, from overseas, and they're watching from Calgary, Canada. Hello, thank you for joining us. Vancouver, Canada. Berlin, Germany. Wow. Kowloon Bay, Hong Kong. Tuaran, Sabah, Malaysia. Phoenix, Mauritius. Lalitpur, Nepal. Doha, Qatar. Singapore. Cleveland, United States. Madison City, Wisconsin, United States. Seattle, United States, and Dubai, United Arab Emirates. And hello as well to Ms. Annalisa Torres from Bacoor, Cavite, Bonilito Brigol of Philippine Seafarers Training Center, and Mr. Oliver Pertuz. They are watching now at our FB live stream. So, our topic for today is find your voice of resiliency so that you lead with confidence. And we have invited a global keynote speaker from United States, but later you'll be meeting him. But before that, let us first have our house rules in order for us to have a smooth flow of our e-learning session. So who are the first time viewers here? Let me know. Please type in hi in the chat box now. Let us know as well where you from so we can greet you later. Hello, Danisa Dayan Molina. Good morning, ma'am. Okay, Fred Demina Fermin, hello, Sir Rene Diaz, Ofelia Del Monte, Jinky Isanan, Metusel Santos, Melanie Gabino, hello, welcome to our e-learning session. Okay, so moving on, let's do an audio check. You will be needing a good quality headset, so please use the following codes. 111 to show if you can hear us loud and clear. We are audible. You can hear us clearly. 111. So far, 111. Sir Oliver, thank you. Lovely Melanie, clear. Andri, Danisa, Maria Teresa Rosales, Thank you so much. So 222 means you cannot hear us. 2121 means the sound is breaking up or there's a log, and question mark if you don't understand anything. So far, Michelle Joanne Santos 111, Jane Duque, clear. Okay, we're good. So we will be having a quick break later after the presentation of our guest speaker, 2 to 3 minute break. So before we move on to our question and answer portion. So for Q&A guidelines, participants' microphones will be temporarily disabled by the administrator during discussion to avoid interruptions. Questions will be entertained after each topic of the session. For questions and clarifications during the provided time after each topic, please click the raise hand button for the administrator to enable the microphone for live questions. Yes, later we will entertain live questions from our participants. Type in your questions at the Q&A box. Again, at the Q&A box, not in the chat box. One question at a time will be entertained. For comments and feedback, please scan this QR code. This will be directed to our feedback form. Please send us your comments, suggestions, topics to discuss in order for us to improve our future e-learning sessions. Okay, let's start. To discuss, find your voice of resiliency so that you lead with confidence. Mr. Howell Mubalot, please introduce our guest speaker.
Thank you, Miss Irish. It is an honor, definite honor. I mean, we are probably more than excited today about not about the storm, but about the coming storm. What kind of storms? I think it's the storm of passion and resilience, and finding your voice is what we want to happen today. So our speaker for today. Brace yourselves, because from flipping hamburgers on Main Street to leading HR for Wall Street, wow, I like that. Our speaker for today has continually reinvented his leadership voice throughout his career to thrive within the uncertainty of our ever-changing world. An imposter syndrome survivor himself, he has successfully coached over 600 leaders and teams to overcome their perception of feeling like a fake and fraud and find their confident brand as a leader. His inspiring yet practical life experiences led him to author the award-winning book, Find Your Voice as a Leader, in 2016 by Ariva Publishing. Everyone, let's all hear from Mr. Paul and Larsen.
Hey! Hello, everybody. Wow, what an amazing storm of an introduction and an amazing storm. So, Hal, thank you so much. That was absolutely beautiful, so eloquent, and it just matches the passion that we all have, right? So thank you. Thank you,
Sir Paul. I'm sure you're aware that there's a storm here in the Philippines.
Yes, I've heard.
It's Ambo. But we're more excited about the coming storm coming from you. Your passion, your the inspiring introduction itself is enough for us to be more excited.
That's wonderful. Well, I look forward to it. I look forward to get going here. And let me kind of get going and with everything. It's wonderful to be here. I am very, very happy to be part of this and to kind of share with everybody what we will be doing. Give me just a second here. Here we go. We've got the storm coming up, and there we go. There we go. So, when we talk about storms, boy, have we had a storm in just the last few months, right? If you really think about everything that's occurred, I really love this. I saw this the other day. The universe has shaken you to awaken you. And I think I'd like to say, yes, I think that's true. I'd like to think that I'm awake. And I'd like to say the shaking can stop any time now. So I think we've shaken and we've awakened. And I'd like to kind of say, let's now think, what do we need to do to kind of find some peace and a little bit of settlement as we go forward? Hal, you probably are very familiar with this also as a leadership expert. Many times in workshops, I've been asked the question, what would the 25-year-old Paul say to the Paul of today, and the Paul of today, by the way, is many decades older than 25 years, you know? And so that question gets asked a lot because we like to think about, you know, what recommendations, what guidance, and so forth. Listen to what, though, I ask myself. Now I ask myself, what would the January 2020 Paul tell the May 2020 Paul today? We have lived in the 4 months since January. It seems like we have lived a lifetime of so much. There's been certainly stress. There's been tragedy. There's been incredible upheavals. And so I just like to really think, wow, January seems such a long time ago. And what would I have recommended to me back in January, knowing what we have gone through? And that's what we're going to kind of focus on today is, how do we sort of find our voice? Number one, what is our inner voice, who we are? How do we find our voice of resiliency? How do we, as you were talking earlier, bounce back, right? How do we continue to go on? Sometimes when we may not even feel like going on. Sometimes when we may not get up in the morning and with a smile on our face or a song in our heart, and you know, or we might have a song in our heart, but it's not a very happy song. So that's what we're going to kind of talk about today. I want to pay homage to all of you in the Philippines, and I love the fact we have such a global community on today's session. I heard, you know, I've got colleagues here from the United States, from Canada. I heard Germany, Malaysia. A big shout out to all my friends in KL and other parts of Malaysia. I think I heard Dubai. I think I heard so many other places as well. I just want to say a big global welcome, a big global hug, which I don't even think we can probably do that even when we see each other in person. I'm not quite sure, but we'll do it virtually. And I just want to call out to the Philippines. Kind of one of the Philippines is near and dear to my heart. So I have had the honor of speaking in the Philippines, of learning in the Philippines, of meeting just getting the Philippine community into my heart. And so I just want to call out and just say, this is such an honor to be part of this today, to be hosted by Ariva in the Philippines, because it just very is near and dear to my heart. As you can see, I've had some fun going on to Boracay. I had some wonderful sessions in Boracay. I've been to Cebu, I've been to Manila, I've been to Baguio City, I've been to Bacolod. I mean, wonderful, wonderful, beautiful, beautiful places where I've learned so much. And I've had an incredible amount of learning for myself. Ladies and gentlemen, you have in front of you a speaker. I'd like to say I'm an expert on my life. I can't say I'm an expert on anyone else's life. I can't even say I'm an expert on maybe leadership or all those other things. All I can give you is my expertise in terms of my life and my mistakes and my successes, which we're going to talk about today. I've had a great, wonderful alignment and opportunities to talk at these organizations and to learn from all of these people. The one quote up there where you see me on the left up there with my little red shoes and my little hand waving, that was at Cebu Pacific last year in Manila when I was working with their leaders. But I love the quote that says, travel brings power and love back into your life. So let's all pray and be blessed that we will have travel back into our lives very, very soon. Greetings from San Francisco. I'm in San Francisco, California, a lovely part of the world, and I'm giving you a very recent photo of our empty streets. We have been sheltering in place. I think every part of the world is calling it something different. We call it here shelter in place, which just means I'm in my seat as I am today. I might have a bow tie or not, but we are sheltering in place. But this is one of our main streets in San Francisco during rush hour. So you can see that we are abiding by the sheltering in place. And on the right-hand side is, of course, the beautiful Golden Gate Bridge. And this is one of our native sons now. We have a large coyote population in the San Francisco Bay Area. But when there's a lot of people, the coyotes kind of hide, right? They go in and they kind of go hide and they forage at night. Well, now that there's less people, the coyotes have kind of come out onto their own and have kind of taken over some of the landmarks that we have known. So that was a very recent picture of a coyote enjoying the view of the Golden Gate, which of course a lot of tourists are and a lot of locals usually like to do, but we're letting them do that right now. So as we go forward, a call out to all of the wonderful opportunities and the wonderful people I've met through my travels. And it's wonderful to be able to reach out and do this virtually now with all of you. In the lower left-hand corner, there are a nice call out to my friends at the Conrad Manila. Those are the wonderful leadership group there that we did some leadership work there about a year ago. But now the world has turned upside down. I'd say that we have just kind of gone one side where we kind of had the thumbs up like that, and everything's kind of like, okay, I'm doing pretty good. I think it's a little bit like this. We are just kind of hanging on. And I don't know about all of you, and everyone's had different experiences, right? How with what has gone on with COVID. But there are days when, yeah, okay, I can kind of get through. And then there are days where it's like, help me. I'm not even sure. And what we're going to share today is what I've been working with myself and also with the clients and the wonderful group leaders and teams that I work with in terms of how do you find that voice of confidence and resiliency and to move forward from this. So I love this. It feels like the world and each of us is holding our breath. That just feels like we're waiting for the next. What's going to happen next? Every time we turn on the news, there's something new. All the infection rates and the hospitalizations and who's shut down and who's opening and everything else. And it's sort of like collectively we're holding our breath. We need to find a new way to breathe going forward. We need to find a new way to be in peace. We need to find a new way to lead. We need to find a new way to be adaptable to the new environment. Now, I'm going to have a reframe coming up. I love reframes as a coach. Reframes are when you say it's bad and you reframe that to say, well, what is the opportunity that we have here? So we're going to do some reframes here, and I'm going to give you a lot of tools to work with on reframes. But we need to really think about a reframe for the word new normal. I hear that new normal a lot. I don't know what that means actually, because I'm not even quite sure what will be anymore. And anytime we use the term normal, that could be a trigger to back what we had back in January and prior in December. Folks, we're not going to be there anymore. So let's reframe what that might mean. I think we need to find a new way to breathe, and I think we need to find a new way to create a new landscape for ourselves. So let's kind of put on as much as we can, our happy face, our smiley face, and go forward from here. So I work with a lot of, I like to say that when I hear my introduction, sometimes I'm like, is that really me? Have I really done that? And I like to think about, yes, the term I use sometimes is executive coach, but actually what I like to think of myself is a mindset coach. I work with a lot of leaders and teams and organizations. More importantly, I work with myself, because if I can't coach myself, I don't think I could coach anyone else. So I work on coaching myself. I also have folks that I trust as coaches to work with me as well. And it's all about the mindset. And I like to think that I free leaders from a fixed mindset. And we're going to talk about a fixed mindset in just a moment, so that they lead with confidence and they lead with purpose from a growth mindset. And I'm going to be talking a lot about fixed mindset and the growth mindset. And we've had a lot of fixed mindsets in today's world. We all experience fixed mindsets. I sometimes have a fixed mindset on certain things. Sometimes when I think something in my mind or in my little brain up here, I'll say, "Oh, that's not the way it's done," or "I've never done it that way." Whoops. That's a sign of a fixed mindset, right? And the first thing we want to do is kind of acknowledge that. So pay attention to that as we go through today's session, to really think about, when do you find yourselves in a fixed mindset? When do you work with folks that might be in a fixed mindset? And what can you do to kind of finesse or pivot to a growth mindset? And this isn't about taking a huge leap. This isn't about one day you're sad and the next minute you're happy. We're not talking about those types of leaps. These are small baby steps that we'll talk about, and I'll show you some ways in which to do that. I love this, and I talked about that earlier in just a couple slides ago about how do we need to find peace now. So, why do we, just a second, why do we only rest in peace? Why don't we live in peace too? And I like to think that we need to find a new way to breathe. We need to find a new way to live in peace going forward. And so I that's kind of setting the framework in terms of my session with all of you today is, we talk about resting in peace. Well, I want to live in peace too. And that doesn't mean everything's going to stop, because we know it's not. But I want to be able to, what do I need to do to be peaceful with myself, to have the confidence with myself, and to handle any of the stressors, the triggers that may come into my life, because they will on a moment's notice. So these are some of the questions I got. I'm not going to go through those now because we're going to have time for Q&A later. I just love some of these pre-questions. I just like, wow, these are beautiful. And all I want to say is at the bottom, you are in the right place. We're going to cover a lot of this today. And then we certainly will have time, as Iris said earlier, we'll have time to answer questions at the end. But I just want to pay acknowledge to those of you that did put in some questions beforehand. Yes, we're going to be covering a lot of these things about self-confidence, or how do we lead employees? How do we lead ourselves and employees through anything like this? How do we lead the millennial staff? One thing I'd like to say right there, I love those kind of questions. Let's get rid of the labels. How do we just lead staff who happen to be maybe millennials, but we don't want to label that. And we're going to talk about that, those reframes, but lovely question. So look at this, what leadership looks like. It kind of can look at the pinnacle, but what it can feel like, it can feel like a work of art. I like that's a Picasso on the right-hand side there, right? So it can feel, it's so structured. It's at the top. I'm at the top. And look at me, and look at the role I have. And look how structured and how clean that is. And that's like a pyramid, right? And then what it feels like is nothing like that. What it feels like is a work of art that we sometimes have to create every day. And that's what we're talking about today is we're going to be working in that space. And when you look at that space on the right, that work of art, to that on the left, it's messier. It's got all squiggly lines. It's got color in all different areas. It's like there's like a burst of this, and there's different shapes, and it's all over the place, versus a nice symmetrical pyramid. Well, that's not what leadership is that nice symmetrical pyramid. That's a fixed mindset, that a person that leads like that. We want to be able to lead in the art. We want to create a work of art for our own leadership. I love this one. Here's what I planned on the left side. And I love your smile, I just love it. You're just, it's like we're compadres, right? And I'm sure a lot of people are laughing at this too, because we all can share this. What we planned, think about December of 2019. Think about January 2020. We were all making our plans for the year, and we were making our resolutions or goals or whatever it might be, or working on a vision board or whatever people might do. And that's what we planned. And then the universe just shook us to awaken us, right? And this is what happens. But irregardless of COVID, irregardless of what's been going on, this happens all the time. This happens in my life, what I planned and what happened. And what I really want to bring out here is this is something I've had to learn through decades. And sometimes I have to, hit a few knocks up here to learn that maybe I need to kind of plan on the right side in terms of, let me plan what's going to happen. So every time I plan something to go straight, and it happens to go what happens with the squiggly lines, and then I get all like, oh no, what do I do? And that happens more than once in my life. I started planning for the squiggly lines. I started planning for all the curves. I started planning for the work of art. I started putting myself into that space. So I wouldn't get frustrated with planning things and then things go all haywire. And again, going back to what's occurring right now, I don't think we have a bigger lesson than what's going on right now with the way the universe has said, the world has said, hey, you might have had all these plans, but this is what's happening. So how do we adjust ourselves to really thrive in that kind of environment? Because we're not going to flip back. We're not flipping back to normal. We have to find a new way to breathe. So I'm not going to go through all of this in detail and so forth, but I will. This will be available on Ariva's YouTube, the recording and so forth, so you can go back and look at this and so forth. But I use this with my clients, and again, I use this with myself too. But I use this with my clients when we talk about layers of change or layers of transition. You have the global, and again, looking at it through the filter of COVID. I need to keep myself and my family safe. Am I okay financially? Do I have a job? Can I even go to work? I have a sore throat. What does that mean? Right now, every time somebody sneezes, I have to tell you a quick story. In the middle of everything, I think it was probably the end of March or April when we were kind of hitting that peak and we didn't know a lot. And we know a little bit more now, which again shows you how much knowledge we can gain in just a short time on everything. But I sneezed on a Zoom call, on a training call, and I sneezed and I said, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Excuse me." Somebody out in the Zoom land that was on the session said, "That's not a symptom. That's not a symptom." I mean, they just jumped right in, and I said, "Thank you so much." I don't know who you were that said that, but I said, "Thank you. I appreciate that." It just shows you where our minds are right now, what we're thinking of. And I hadn't even thought of that when I sneezed. But these are all the things we think about globally. How long will this go on? I'm sure we're all thinking that. But again, it's not about how long it's going to go on. It's how do we adapt to that tenure. Then we have the next layer, which is sort of our sphere of influence a little more, our organization perhaps, our community. What else is going to be going on with organizations? I'm working with a lot of organizations now that are going through lots of changes, like probably a lot of folks that are on this session today. And they're going through lots of organizations. Some of the clients I've had have gone through restructuring, and they've had to lay people off. Some of the other organizations have actually gotten more business because of what's been going on, just the nature of their business. So they've been hiring and ramping up. And of course, we're doing all of this like this in our new virtual environment. So what's going to happen? What are the strategies? How are we going to get through this as a group? Or what is the organization going to look like? So all those things are occurring then at the community level or organization level. And then finally, the last layer, and this is the most important layer, really, because it's what's in it for me. The old what's in it for me, the WIFM, right? How am I supposed to deal with this? With on top of homeschooling, because a lot of folks have had to do homeschooling. How is my job changing? Will I have the skills and support? How can I contribute? All these things that come into play about me. Or some people are just saying, I'm scared and I'm frozen and I'm stuck and I don't know what to do. So these are the layers of change I really want to point out, because we are getting bombarded with media, with news. I'm sure a lot of you have friends and colleagues and family that send you information all the time. I've got a friend who sends out an email about every 30 minutes with an update on every single infection there is. And I finally said, I really appreciate you doing this. But I said, you really could take me off that for now, and let's communicate again in a couple of weeks, because it was just like bombardment. And of course, I always look at it, people are doing it from the best of intent, right? But how do we deal with all of these changes? And this is where 60,000 comes in. And it's not 60,000 pesos, it's not 60,000 ringlets, it's not $60,000. 60,000 is the number of thoughts that we can have in a given day. This was a study done by the National Institute of Science. And this study was done back in 2005, which it sounds like 15 years ago now, right? It sounds like a long time ago. but it was done in 2005. So this has probably even increased a little bit. But they did this study, and they said an average adult can have up to 60,000 thoughts in a given day. Up to 89% of those, thoughts can be negative thoughts. They come in and they can be negative thoughts. So I want you to think about this, because this is the core of what I'm talking about today. This is the core of what I coach. This is the core of how I live. As a mindset coach, we are picky about the cars we drive when we can get out there and drive again. We are picky about the cars we drive. We are picky about the food we eat. We are picky about the shows we watch on Netflix or whatever your media of choice is. We are picky about our friends, but we are not as picky about the thoughts we're thinking. Those thoughts can just come in, and then they can influence everything, because our thoughts create our feelings, and our feelings create action. And we will take action or not take action based on those feelings, which are based on those thoughts. It's all linked. And we're going to see some examples of that in just a moment. So I want you to think of that 60,000 thoughts as it pertains to the layers of change and everything we're getting bombarded on, and the threats then that come in. So as we're getting all these thoughts, and the 60,000 was just an average day in 2005 when the study was done. So fast forward to May of 2020, I think like the thoughts that we're getting trigger a lot of threats, right? There's nothing, we're going through this hashtag pandemic pause. We're going through this hashtag COVID crisis, whatever people want to call it, has a lot to do with their mindset. Now think about COVID crisis versus a pandemic pause. And I don't want to discount any of that with the impact it's had, but even the way we talk about it, even the way what we call it has an impact to our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions. So the threats are detected. And then in coaching, we talk about conditional tendencies or conditioned tendencies. And a lot of you have probably heard these things before, and we'll this could be a review. But conditioned tendencies are kind of automatic reactions we have to any kind of stimuli. They're sort of patterns that are learned at an earlier time that show up in us without sometimes a conscious choice. We just do it. We just do it. So if you're all sitting down right now, I'd like you to just cross your arms. Just cross your arms. Just cross your arms. Okay? Cross your arms like this, right? Okay? Now, uncross your arms. Right. Now, cross your arms, but do it the opposite way. And wait a minute. Okay, just like that. Okay. You could still do it, of course, but it required just a moment of, what? What did he say? How do I do that? I know how to cross my arms, but he said, do it the opposite way. Oh, okay. It took just a moment. And the way we cross our arms is conditioned. It's just conditioned. Well, our thoughts work the same way. And when we detect threats in our environment, we look for conditioned tendencies of safety, of security, of connection, of belonging. And the last one is dignity. So I want you to think about this for a second, and even yourself, your family, your friends, your organizations. Of course, we're looking for safety. That's all we're hearing about is how safe are we? How safe are they? What about the security? What about the security of our healthcare, of our frontline workers, the security of our jobs? Connection. My word. Can we have any better example of not being connected than we physically can't be connected like the way we used to? Some of us can't even walk into stores like we used to be able to do. And that's going to all be different. So connections are really important. How do we maintain those connections? And then that leads to belonging. It leads to the whole, do I belong? How do I belong? And going back to your layers of transition, where do you belong in each one of those layers? And then lastly is dignity. And dignity plays a role with your confidence. It plays a role with how you show up to yourself and to others. It plays a role with your adaptability and your resiliency. So we're going to talk more about dignity because that's actually very important in terms of how we manage our mind, because it's all about managing the mind. As a coach, I get asked a lot, tell me something to do, Paul. Tell me the next action I need to take. Tell me the next communication I need to make. Paul, tell me what I should do with this employee. Paul, can you tell me, like, I don't know how to make these decisions, but tell me the next steps. I get that a lot sometimes as a coach. It doesn't start with action. It starts with our mind. It starts with the thoughts that we have up here. So I want you to sort of dissolve the action for just a moment. And I want you to think about how we manage the mind. A great example of this, going back to PC days, or pre-COVID days, as I like to say. In December, when we kind of set up our resolutions, some people love to do New Year's resolutions, and they think, oh wow, I'm going to work out more. I'm going to go to the gym every day. I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to run and I'm going to work out on the muscles, and I'm going to work out and I'm going to lose some weight, and I'm just going to go to the gym. So January comes, everyone celebrates the new year in that particular calendar, and then they start going to the gym. And then what happens in February? The gyms are empty again, right? The gyms are empty again because people took action without managing the mind, without changing their thought pattern, without changing their thoughts, without changing their mindset. They might have even been in a fixed mindset when they went to the gym, and they realized, it's too hard to exercise. And so I really don't like it. And so I think instead of going to the gym come February 10th, I'm going to go take a nap. And then what happens is they're not getting in shape. This is what we kind of call the process of manifestation. Because our thoughts, if you don't change that thought, eventually the thought leads to the feeling leads to the action, and then the action will lead to the result. And then you'll get more of that. So before you want to take any type of new action, you have to start with a new thought. So let's start with what I talked about earlier, our reframe exercise. Reframe is from reaction to reconnection. And the reason I like to say this is the reframe starts up here. It starts up here, not in my mind, in your mind too. I keep saying up here, but it's in your mind too. How we reframe is so important. So I just put a few things here that kind of come up sometimes. I mentioned this the other day on my social media. I sent out some social media post. I've been hearing the term remote all the time. I don't know if you're hearing it in your local geographies, in the Philippines or in Canada or in Dubai or in Malaysia or in Singapore and Germany. I'm hearing it so much in the States. Remote workers, remote team. I'm like, what does that mean? Why are they remote? Just because they don't work somewhere where you're working, or just because they don't work in the home office, or just because they don't work in headquarters, they're not remote. Think of the word remote. It means isolated. It means disconnected. Maybe I would like to be on a remote island somewhere enjoying something, and that's a whole nother type of mindset. But in terms of workers and employees, engagement, morale, you don't want to call them remote. Find another term to use. It could be something like virtual. It could be field employees. It could be different terms, but remote already has a disconnect that is being used. Another term that we use a lot, and I've been guilty of this as I've been a manager. I've been a manager for decades, and as I talked to you earlier, I made every single mistake there is to make as a manager, a couple times more than once. As I've learned from those mistakes, and I've had great successes. But you think about the term subordinate. That is, like, to me, a very clinical term. It's like a factory term. It's like a term that's used in they're subordinate, and it's like, wow, that really makes me feel great. Paul's a subordinate of Iris. Paul's a subordinate of Helen. It's like, the subordinate means less than, right? And it already has that connotation. Now, in the old probably in some of the old books I read when I got some of my degrees, I'm sure the term came up quite a bit, especially in organizational psych or industrial psych. The term subordinate comes up, but nowadays, colleague, associate, these aren't my subordinates, because that means less than, lower than. That's another term. A couple more, and again, you can access this later. Lockdown. Oh my gosh. When I hear that term lockdown, it's like, oh my gosh. It's like, I can't move. I'm not supposed to do anything. I may be already frozen up here, but I don't need to be physically locked down and frozen as well. I had a couple of folks that were lovely that I was coaching the other day, and they're at a startup. They're at 2 different startups, and they're in their house, and they just got married, and it was lovely. And they were just talking about being a newlywed couple, and each of them working in different companies, and how do they kind of start their new relationship as a married couple. And they kept saying lockdown. And I said to them, what you might want to think about is not using the term lockdown as a married couple. Let's reframe that. So you're not starting out as a beautiful married couple in lockdown. Just finesse that term a little bit. So here are some other things. And I mentioned the new normal. Think about like a rebooted world. We started using that at one of my clients the other day, and they loved it. It's like, because they're a tech company, and they're like, oh, rebooted world, and then a rebooted like community, or a rebooted team, or could be a new landscape. Think about something that just might be slightly different. But reframes, ladies and gentlemen, reframes are so important, because they actually begin up here to pivot your mind. And again, going back to the example of going to the gym, if we can go back to those, we have to reframe our negativity that we might have about, I don't like to exercise, or I don't want to go. We have to learn how to reframe that. I'll give you some examples in just a moment. These are 3 questions I want you to think and take away from. I ask this of all my clients, and I ask this of myself as well. As a leader, really think about what inspires me. What inspires me as a leader? What am I inspired about? What gets me up with a smile on my face? And what gets me up to lead? What really just like, wow, I love doing this. What inspires me about leadership? Sometimes, what do I need to let go of? What do I need to just take a breath and just let go of, right? And just let it go. And then, what am I grateful for? What am I grateful for as a leader? These 3 questions I ask my clients, coaching clients, and sometimes teams all the time. And because they can change, right, from day to day. Sometimes they change from hour to hour for the individual, but they certainly can change from day to day, or at least from the times I see them, week to week or month to month. So, but really think about what inspires you as a leader. What do you need to let go of? And what am I grateful for? And it all plays out as we look at our change curve. And many of you have probably seen this before. This is the old transition curve. It's been around for a long time. It's been around for a long time because it works really well. And it's just a great way to kind of show, where am I? Where is my community? And where is the world? But more importantly, the world's going to do what the world's going to do. My job is not to change the world. My job is to change myself, so our world will change. I want you to remember that. And I'll repeat that again at the end. But think about that from a transition perspective. Many times when we're ending something, and again, going back to January, and when all of this, when COVID started really, really hitting us in the States, it really started really in the February to March timeframe, depending even where you were located. But could be a lot of denial, because things were ending. That the way we lived was kind of ending. So we go to denial, and then we go to resistance, and people love resistance. They love the energy of resistance, and it's just resisting. We know this whenever there's any kind of transition or change, and people will resist, and they will sometimes won't even know why they're resisting. They just like the energy because they have energy and they can resist. And then you lead from resistance and you go into this kind of neutral zone, which is kind of like, I love it kind of like on a scale of 1 to 5, it's the 3. It's that 3 that everyone kind of just selects if they don't really know what they really, how they really feel on one of those evaluations. It's a 3. That's the neutral zone. And then as a coach, we work on helping you explore just by reframes, just by questions, just by maybe opening up some of the fixtures up here in your fixed mind to explore what could a new possibility or a new potential look like. You don't have to like it. You don't even have to agree with it, but that exploration. And then finally, through the change, you get to that commitment level where you are committed to it. And any of you that have worked in organizations, and I'm going to assume that most of you work in organizations of some kind or have, you've gone through all of this before. You may have not always known this. Some people can go through it fairly fast. As a manager, you might be at the commitment box, but your team might be back at resistance. And your job as a manager and as a leader is to help them through this different transition curve. And I've got some tools in terms of helping them through that. But what I see sometimes the biggest mistake, and I made this myself. By the way, any mistake I talk about in here, I've lived it, I've done it, I've authored it. So know that it's tried and true. I remember changes we had in organizations. It could have been a new software implemented. It could have been a restructuring, and some people were losing their jobs, or could have been all different types of changes. And I remember as a manager, because managers sometimes might be ahead of the curve, which is what this is talked about. I was already at commitment. I'd done the denial. I'd worked through the exploration, but my team or other people were not. And I would say, get over it, move on, get over it, move on. Now, how's that for a manager to say that? That's the worst thing. When I think about that, I just cringe, because that came out of my mouth, a much younger mouth, by the way, but my mouth ages ago. But I used to say that because I was all the way over on the beginnings and my team was all the way over on endings, and they hadn't worked through any of this. And I was just pushing them to get through this. That's what's occurring right now on a global scale with everything. We can't control all of that. All we can do is understand, where are we in this? How can I help myself work through some of this? And then how can I help the people that I do influence? We can't help everything we see on the news, but we can help where we can have impact with our teams or our friends or our family, wherever that may be. So the change curve can be very, very helpful with that. Here's another one too. Now, this is very helpful. And this operationalizes what I just talked about here. So we talked about the world being upside down. So that's where, we're upside down, and we're in the fear zone. I grabbed food and toilet paper. I don't know about the rest of the world, but the US had a run on toilet paper. And for the life of me, that was none of us quite, or I shouldn't say none of us, I didn't understand what all that was about. But what it was, though, is a great example of scarcity. People were afraid. And leaders lead that way sometimes. They lead from a place of fear. They lead from a place of scarcity. So the toilet paper, as funny as that was, and humorous, it actually represented a very, very key message for the rest of us to learn. So the fear zone is just, I complain frequently. I forward all messages I receive. That's my friend who just gets all this stuff in and just forwards it out. I get mad easily. People get triggered, and all of a sudden, they might react. And you might notice this in yourself, or you might notice it in some of your team members or family or friends. The learning zone is a little bit, now you're getting into less resistance, more exploration. And this is where I start to give up what I can't control. Because if anything this pandemic has caused us to look at is, I can't control this. I can't control what's going to happen to the world, much less even my country, much less even my city. But I can control how it impacts me. And I can control how it impacts and what I do with the information and how I help other people with that. So you start to give up what I can't control. You identify your emotions. This is one of the key tenets we probably all know of emotional intelligence. You identify, okay, I'm pissed off right now, or I'm really sad today. I am sad. I'm just, you identify the emotions. Don't hide them. There's nothing wrong with it. There's no right or wrong answers. It's just what they are. I evaluate information before spreading something false. I look at the information as like, is this information helpful? Is this going to help? We have in the United States, not only are we going through COVID, we also have an election year. And I'm not going to get into any of the politics of the United States or any part of the world. But when you have an election year, you have people on steroids, just like they are just sending messages and getting all their information and being very loud, right? I always ask, and I always coach my clients, is the information you're sending helpful? What's the value of that information? What's the purpose and what's the outcome to it? Take 2 minutes and think through that before you do send that, right? And then what's really important is I recognize that we're all trying to do our best. And I think that's key. We're all trying to do our best over there. And then the growth zone. If you can continue on to the growth zone, you live in the present and focus on the future. You thank and appreciate others. You look for ways to serve. One of the biggest ways to get unstuck and unfrozen and become resilient in terms of everything going on is look for ways to serve. Look for ways to help others. There is always somebody that needs help. I don't care where you live. I don't care who you are. I don't care what community you're in. There is always somebody that needs help. And one of the ways when I'm stuck and I'm unfrozen and I deal with the thoughts up here, I take a step back. I look at my life and I'm like, yeah, I think I got a pretty good life. I'm blessed for lots of different things, and I can help some others. I can help other people. Look for ways in which you can serve, because what it does is it pivots your mindset. It pivots that mindset. It reframes your mind. If you realized how powerful your thoughts are, you would never think a negative thought again. I mean, be picky with your thoughts, just as you're picky with your food, just as you're picky with what you watch on TV. Our thoughts are incredibly powerful. And it goes back to what I talked about. Are you a leader of abundance? Are you a leader that shares? Are you a leader that collaborates? Or are you a leader of fear? Are you a leader that hoards? Are you a leader that won't share? Abundance versus scarcity. It's the old growth mindset versus the fixed mindset. And as I talked about, the growth mindset, the growth mindset can be messy, because we get in and we make some mistakes, and then we look and like, okay, well, I did do that and I got to learn from that, versus it's not my fault. It's your fault and your fault and your fault. You point everywhere else, right? Fixed mindsets are very rigid. Fixed mindsets are that's not the way we do it here. That's not the way we've ever done it. And we will never do it that way. That comes usually from fear. And that comes from a need for control, the old command and control that we talked about. That's a fixed mindset. So how do you go from sort of that fixed to growth? Well, here you go. This is a great chart. What kind of mindset do I want to have during COVID-19? And this could be, what kind of mindset do I want to have in my life, actually? But we're going to use COVID-19 to be sort of the filter, because it's happening right now. So the problem is, let's just say we are all being asked to practice social distancing. A fixed mindset might say, I have to stay indoors and do nothing. I can't go outside. I have to stay in here. A growth mindset might be, I can find new ways to do things if I try. And as a coach, I might then push and say, what's one step you could do tomorrow to try, right? And then an innovative mindset, that's kind of like, that's even at the further, wow, you got the growth, and then you go to innovative. That's, social distancing gives me the opportunity to help people do things differently. There's the helper. There's the service. So you can see where you can take examples of problems that we're having right now. Look at examples with fixed mindset. Look at the words that are in the fixed mindset. The problems are too big. I am scared. I'm worried. And these are all very realistic problems to have. Just realize that, though. And then what can you do, though, from the growth mindset? What are ways in which you can look to learn, or stay well informed, or stay connected, or help to solve problems? And then move on over to that innovative mindset. So again, this is a great tool to really look you and help you with how to work from a fixed to growth to innovative. And again, another reframe, right? And we won't go through this because I want to make sure we have time for the other things, because we did a reframe. But the old reaction could be, I'm totally overwhelmed, or this is so nuts, or the situation is terrible, I'm scared. And a new reconnection might be, what can I do about it? What can I control or influence? What can I learn from this? This is ruining my day. I deserve better. Very, very fixed mindset in a very ego-driven mindset, right? New reconnection is, I'm responsible for how I handle this. Is this how I want to show up as a leader? Think about you as a manager, you as a leader. No matter what your position is or your title, you are a leader in your life. It doesn't matter. How do you want to show up, right? I'm going to ask all of you. You were born an original. Have the courage to not die a copy. I have just asked this of all of you. I ask this of myself. I ask this of all my clients. We were all born unique. We were all born originals. Have the courage to not die a copy. It's so easy to be in a fixed mindset all the time. And then we just die a copy of somebody else. Don't do that. Find something unique and valuable and step out of that fixed mindset. You can go back into it, but just acknowledge it and step out again. And that makes you unique, and that brings your voice and your value to the world. Anybody ever feel like this? You're swimming and you're swimming in the ocean. You're swimming in the ocean of organizations, and here we are, and we wear different masks, right? We might think we're a shark, or we might think and we are a shark, but we actually feel like a goldfish, right? So let me ask you, do you ever chalk up your success to luck or timing or fate? Do you agonize over the smallest flaws in your work? Are you crushed by criticism, seeing it as evidence of your ineptness? When you do succeed, do you secretly feel like you fooled them again? That was a big one for me, because I had some great successes, but I always felt I was fooling them. Do you worry that it's just a matter of time before you're found out? Is this you? Do you feel sometimes at work you don't belong? You're kind of just sitting there and like, okay, if I get down and I look like this, nobody's going to notice that I really don't belong. I'll wear the same color coat. I'll kind of adjust my little whiskers, and nobody will really know that I don't belong, right, at work. Well, if you've answered yes to any of those, then you've got what we call imposter syndrome. I'm a living proof of that. I have had it in my life. I could probably go back and look at my past and figure out where it started. I don't tend to do that because the past you can't change, so it doesn't really matter. However, I do recognize when I acknowledged it, and what can I do about it? Because this was me. I was always looking the other way when other people were looking I was always looking the opposite way, always trying to kind of fit in. I was head of HR at a company. It was a $3 billion company. And I was like, what am I doing here? I don't know what I'm doing. And I thought, they're going to find out that I'm a fake. They're going to find out that I'm a fraud at work and that I don't know what I'm doing. And they're going to come up and they're going to tap me on the shoulder and they're going to say, Paul, we know that you don't know what you're doing here. We know that you're a fraud. You're not really an HR leader. We're going to ask you to leave. And it was crazy, because the people that would ask me to leave would be from HR, right? And I was what I was, head of. So the irony was not lost on me, but that was how imposter syndrome plays out in our minds. And it can bring up all sorts of self-doubt, all sorts of self-confidence. The good news is so many successful people, up to 80% of people, successful people, have admitted to having imposter syndrome at some point in their life or living with it, right? Maya Angelou, the wonderful late author, written 11 books, but each time I think, they're going to find out now. I run a game on everybody and they're going to find me out. Michelle Smith had said it the other day. She said it just about a year ago. She was talking to a group of primary school, and she says, I don't even know why I feel like I'm an expert on anything to talk to you. And people ask me, well, who's Michelle Smith? Well, she has another name. She goes by Michelle Obama. So she was our former first lady for 8 years. She acknowledges all the time imposter syndrome that she has had in her life. So we're in great company. We're in absolutely phenomenal company. It was actually founded in 1978. It's not a real medical syndrome, although it's called imposter syndrome. All genders, all industries, all positions, 80% of successful people having it at one point in their lives. It really occurs, now this is important, it occurs when someone who is confident and successful convinces themselves. Nobody else is convincing you. It's up here in your mind. It's, again, in your mind, that we aren't good enough, and fears they will be found out as a fraud or not as good as they should be, right? It isn't just self-doubt or lack of confidence. It's the gap between who you see yourself as being and who you think you need to be. And with COVID-19, it has brought out imposters all over the place, imposter syndromes all over. I've seen it just go everywhere with my coaching clients and a lot of the organizations that I work with and the teams, because again, the layers of change we talked about, people are now like, what do I do? How am I supposed to act? Oh my gosh, they're going to really know I don't know what I'm doing. It's that threat level, and it just triggers everything up here. So the impact of it, it can certainly impact team performance, productivity, team dynamics. This is sometimes why high performers leave a company. It's not because they're looking for something else. They feel like they're going to be found out, and they go somewhere else before they're found out. This is one of the key reasons why high performers leave a company. It can trigger stress and fear. It can certainly affect relationships at home. And keep this in mind. Self-doubt is about what you can do. Imposter syndrome is about who you think you are. So they're slightly different. There's a finesse there. It's not just getting the confidence. You have to kind of get to think like, I am here to do this. I can do this, right? Oops, hold on. There we go. So it's not who you are that holds you back. It's who you think you're not. That's just been my life. You know, when I've gotten stuck before, it's who I'm thinking I'm not that actually holds me back. I can be confident. I can go out on stage. I can talk. I can train. I can facilitate. But every now and then the old imposter will come up and say, you're not really who you think you are, Paul. You wrote a book in 2016 that, Hal just talked about, that was published, but you're really not an author. Do people know you're really not an author? And that just plays up here in my head. That's not necessarily confidence because I got the book out, right? But there's an imposter piece that says, you don't really know who you are, right? So I wrote I was very honored. Talk about imposter syndrome. I was featured in, I'm part of the Forbes Coaches Council. And I've been featured in different Forbes articles and so forth. But I wrote a piece for this one that says 15 ways to overcome imposter syndrome. And I'm sitting there like, who am I to write this? I'm an imposter writing about imposter syndrome. And I feel like it was crazy. But here are the 15 different ways, and you can access the article. Just go to Forbes and you can access the article. It's a great article. Number 12 was mine. Change your story and reframe. Remember the reframes we talked about? That's what I did. I reframed and said, here is what my imposter is saying. You are not an author. And then my reframe to that was a couple of wonderful sentences about, you wrote a wonderful book. The book won awards. People have gotten inspired from your book, and your book is an inspiration of your life. And when I looked at that reframe, it wasn't so much calling myself an author. It was the outcome and the result of my work of art that I did. And that has brought me into so much more fulfillment about the book, because that was my imposter coming out. So stop thinking about what they're thinking about you too. I don't know who they are, but they're not necessarily thinking about you because we're not that important. We're really not that important that all these people are thinking about us. We like to think they are. And it's like, but folks, we're not, so stop thinking about that. And this is the old proverbial, sometimes we put out, social media is incredible for this. All these people are living these wonderful lives on social media, that polished apple. But in the back of that is kind of a bite out of the core, right? And this is as we kind of conclude today, before we go into the Q&A, this is an exercise that will be available to all of you, and I'm happy to send it to you and so forth. But this is what I use for myself, and it's what I use for my clients. And this is my model, find your voice, right? So voice stands for value, outcome, influence, courage, and expression. But in this filter, this is, how do I focus? How do I become more confident? How do I become more resilient? So what you do is you kind of go through, and in that square there in the middle, you write down what your focus is. And so let me give you an example. This was one of my clients who had a team meeting coming up and was actually apprehensive about leading their team meeting. They're a leader at an organization. They've gotten some feedback they don't communicate. They've gotten some feedback that the team is disengaged. They've gotten some feedback that they don't listen very well, the leader. So we went through the exercise to say, for Monday's team meeting, just Monday's team meeting, not your whole life, just Monday's team meeting, what do you value? I value listening. I want to be a good listener. Okay, what's your outcome for that? I want to have connection to the team. That's my only outcome, is to have connection. What do you need to influence for yourself in order to be successful? And the leader says, I need to be calm, quiet, and I need to breathe. And if you knew this leader, and she gives me permission to at least talk through this. She's a raging extrovert. She never stops talking. She never breathes. She's just on and on and on. So for her to come up with what she needed to influence and to take a step back, that was something she had to practice before the meeting. Her courage, she goes, my courage is I have to ask good questions. That's where I have to step out of my comfort zone. To some people, that's not courage. To her, it was. She never asked questions. She just told people things. She had to actually stop and ask good questions. That took a lot for her to do that. And I said, what's your brand that you want from the meeting? And she said, caring. I want to show up as my expression to be a caring leader. So what this does is it just helps you focus on a particular event, a particular situation, a particular scenario. I work with this with all my clients. I use this myself all the time, sometimes in a morning ritual. So some people get up in the morning, they take 5 minutes. This should take no more than 5 minutes, if not even that, and you just work it through. So, yeah, great, wonderful. And then lastly, your self-care for your sign. So whatever your sign is, I love this. This was on a website. Whatever your sign is, they kind of break it down for what is the self-care you've got that you should do for your sign. So I'm a Sagittarius. So self-care for me is painting or drawing, right? So I love this. This is really, really kind of fun. So it might, whatever that self-care is for your sign, whether or not you follow astrology, this could be pretty fun. And certainly doesn't mean you can't borrow from another sign as well. Lastly, this is the last thing I want to leave you with before my gift to all of you. Take a nice breath right now. We've gone through a lot of information, but this is really the most important. Those who died yesterday had plans for this morning. And those who died this morning had plans for tonight. Don't take life for granted. In the blink of an eye, everything can change. So forgive often and love with all your heart. You may never know when you may not have that chance again. This is so impactful, and I don't think we need more of a message than what we have right now. So look at all of us being able to be on this wonderful session today. Well, it was wonderful for me to be with all of you. I'm not sure the other, but I'm going to assume. But here we are sharing all of this. There were people that didn't have that opportunity. So really remember that. Be grateful, be appreciative for what we have in our life. And it's just a wonderful ounce and lots and lots and lots of gratitude and thank you to all of you. I now have something just as we close. Here's all my contact information if you'd like to get in contact with me. And if you go to my website, which is paulandlarsen.com, and you type in the /special-offer, you'll be able to download a complimentary e-version of my book, Find Your Voice as a Leader. So there'll be a little form for you to, or just a very short question to fill out your email, and then you'll get a download of this in Apple, Kindle, and PDF. So this is what I use with my clients. And then that's my gift for all of you for being here today. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sir Paul and Larsen. Everybody put your hands together. You know what, Sir Paul? I love your memes. I love the pictures. I love your sense of humor. I love your quotes. And the best part of the presentation is you. Not only your beautiful bow tie, but your spirit, your energy, you're animated, you are impassioned, you are burning, and we felt you. You may be in San Diego, we're in all parts of the world, but we felt you, sir.
Well, I really welcome that. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate that, because I will tell you it's genuine. It's genuine from my heart. I'm inspired. We talked about inspiration. It's not forced. This is all inspired action, which life should be. So I really I really appreciate that feedback, because I do this from my heart. I'm inspired, and we're only here for in the physical form for such a short period of time. I want to make a little bit of difference that I can. So thank you so much.
You made an impact. Our presentation definitely made an impact to on all of us. And sir, right now I'm sure our participants are excited to ask you questions.
Okay.
But we'll give you 2 minutes, and our participants as well. 2 minutes to pause for a break, so that you can please sip a cup of coffee or grab a bite. I'm not sure what time it is now in San Diego, but here in the Philippines, almost lunchtime. That's way past your bedtime, I believe, in San Diego. But thank you for staying awake.
No worries. It's only 8:40 p.m. here, so I'm old, but I'm not that old where I go.
You are not old. You are a fine gentleman who's bursting with power and energy, positivity. We are so thankful. So right now, thanks everyone for listening. Type in your question at the Q&A box. We'll pause for a 2-minute break, and when we return, the more exciting part of the session will happen. So don't go away. We'll be right back.